The void between Kepler Station and the Outer Rim tastes like copper pennies and regret. I've been hauling freight through this particular stretch of nothing for 7 years now, and the emptiness still gets under my skin like space dust in an old wound. My name's Vera Cross, and I drive a rust bucket hauler called the Iron Mule through the loneliest corners of human space, carrying whatever cargo pays enough to keep the fusion core humming and the life support breathing. Most folks think long-haul trucking is about the solitude, but they're wrong. It's about the voices. Out here, past the last navigation beacon, past the final whisper of civilization's radio chatter, you learn to listen to the static. Not just listen, commune with it. The white noise becomes your congregation, and if you pay attention long enough, it starts to sing back. That's how I first heard her. I was 3 days out from Kepler, hauling a cargo pod full of hydroponic equipment to some backwater mining colony that probably wouldn't exist by the time I made my return run. The Iron Mule's comm array was cycling through frequencies like it always did, searching for anything that might pass for company in the endless dark. Mostly it found solar interference and the dying gasps of ancient pulsars, but sometimes, if you knew how to tune the receivers just right, you could catch fragments of other haulers' transmissions, bouncing off asteroid fields and ice rings like electronic tumbleweeds. I was nursing my 3rd cup of synthetic coffee and watching the stars crawl past my viewport when the voice cut through the static like a blade through silk. Vera, if you can hear this, don't trust the coordinates in the nav computer. The asteroid field isn't where they say it is, and the pirates... The transmission dissolved back into white noise before I could process what I'd heard. I sat there for a long moment, coffee cooling in my hands, wondering if the isolation was finally getting to me. 7 years of solo runs will do things to a person's mind, make you hear voices that aren't there, see faces in the star patterns that look too much like people you used to know. But the voice had said my name. I rewound the comm buffer and played it back, adjusting the filters and boosting the signal. The words came through clearer this time, though still wrapped in layers of interference. Vera, if you can hear this, don't trust the coordinates in the nav computer. The asteroid field isn't where they say it is, and the pirates are using it as cover. I repeat, the Helix Nebula coordinates are wrong. They're leading ships into an ambush. My blood went cold. The Helix Nebula was exactly where I was headed. A shortcut through a supposedly empty stretch of space that would shave 2 days off my delivery time. But what really made my hands shake wasn't the warning about pirates. It was the voice itself. I'd heard it before, every morning for 34 years, whenever I talked to myself in the mirror, or sang along to the old Earth ballads I kept on my personal drive. The voice in that transmission was mine, but older somehow, worn down by years and hardship like a river stone polished smooth. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, that space was full of people who might sound similar over a degraded comm channel. But deep down, in the part of my mind that had learned to trust the whispers in the static, I knew better. I changed course. The transmission had been old. The signal degradation and the way it bounced suggested it had been ricocheting around this sector for years, maybe even a decade. But embedded in the static were navigation markers, coordinates that led deeper into the void than any sane hauler would venture. I followed them like breadcrumbs through a digital forest, each one bringing me further from the established shipping lanes and closer to whatever ghost was calling my name. 3 days later, I found her. The ship hung in the shadow of a rogue planetoid, dark and silent as a tombstone. She was a hauler like mine, but older, one of the heavy-duty models they used to build back when the expansion was young and desperate. Her hull was scarred by micrometeorite impacts and solar radiation, and her registration beacon had been dead so long that ice crystals had formed around the transmitter array. According to my scanner, her name was the Iron Mule. I sat in my pilot's chair for a long time, staring at the derelict ship that shared my vessel's name, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The odds of two ships having identical names were astronomical, but not impossible. Ship names got recycled, especially out here in the frontier, where record-keeping was spotty and bureaucracy was more of a suggestion than a rule. But when I ran a deep scan on her hull configuration and engine signature, the readings came back identical to my own ship, down to the smallest detail. Not similar, identical. As if someone had taken the Iron Mule and duplicated it atom by atom. The rational part of my mind offered explanations. Parallel construction, identical refits, maybe even some kind of corporate standardization I wasn't aware of. But the part of me that had learned to listen to the void's whispers knew better. I suited up and crossed over. The airlock cycled with a wheeze that spoke of failing seals and dying systems. Emergency lighting cast everything in a hellish red glow, and the air tasted of recycled breath and desperation. But the ship was still pressurized, still warm, as if someone had just stepped out for a moment and would be right back. The cargo hold was empty except for the ghosts of old shipments, scuff marks on the deck plates where containers had been secured, tie-down points that still held frayed straps and forgotten cables. I made my way forward through corridors that matched my own ship's layout perfectly, past a galley that held the same mismatched plates and coffee-stained mugs I ate from every day. I found her in the pilot's compartment, slumped over a control console that looked like it had been jury-rigged with spare parts and stubborn hope. She was me. Not similar, not a close resemblance. She was literally me, down to the scar on my left hand from a childhood accident, and the way my hair always fell across my forehead when I was concentrating. But she was older, maybe by 10 years. And there was something in her face that spoke of harder choices and darker roads than the ones I'd traveled. Her eyes opened when I knelt beside her, and she smiled with lips that were cracked from dehydration and exhaustion. "Took you long enough," she whispered, "though I suppose time works differently when you're caught between dimensions." "I don't understand," I said, though part of me was beginning to. She gestured weakly toward the navigation console, where star charts flickered across multiple screens. Quantum navigation experiment about 10 years ago. The Helix Corporation was trying to find faster routes through folded space, cutting travel time by manipulating dimensional barriers. They hired me to test the prototype drive. I looked at the charts, recognizing some of the routes as ones I'd flown myself. What happened? "The drive worked," she said with a bitter laugh. "Too well. Instead of folding space, it folded reality, created a pocket dimension where this ship exists parallel to yours, following the same routes, carrying the same cargo, living the same life. But time moves differently here. What's been 7 years for you has been 17 for me. The pieces started falling into place. The transmission. I've been broadcasting warnings for years, trying to reach other versions of myself before they make the same mistakes I did. The pirates in the Helix Nebula, the faulty nav coordinates, the corporate contracts that are too good to be true. I've seen them all play out a dozen times in different dimensions. I stared at her, at myself, trying to process the implications. How many other versions are there? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every choice creates a new branch, a new reality where Vera Cross makes different decisions. Most of them die young, pirates, equipment failure, the usual hazards of the trade. But some survive, and some find their way here, to the space between spaces where broken realities go to die. She reached for a data pad beside her chair, her movements slow and deliberate. I've been mapping them, tracking the decision points where our lives diverge. The choice to take the Helix job was a big one, but there are others. Smaller moments that ripple outward like stones in a pond. The data pad showed a complex web of branching timelines, each one labeled with dates and brief descriptions. Some branches ended abruptly, killed by raiders near Tau Ceti. Life support failure in the void, took corporate job, never flew again. Others continued for decades, showing versions of me who became fleet captains, station administrators, even pirates themselves. Why show me this? I asked. Because you still have a choice, she said. In 3 days, if you continue on your current route, you'll receive a job offer from Helix Corporation. The pay will be better than anything you've ever seen, and the work will seem simple. Just test flights for a new navigation system. You'll think it's your ticket to a better life. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's failing life support. And if I take it, you end up here, trapped between dimensions, watching other versions of yourself make the same mistakes over and over again. But if you don't... She gestured to another branch on the timeline, one that continued far into the future. You keep flying, keep hauling freight through the void. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and it's yours. I studied the timeline, tracing the paths that led to different versions of my life. Some were better, some were worse, but they were all mine in their own way. What about you? What happens to this version? She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she looked peaceful. I've been holding this pocket dimension together through sheer willpower for 10 years, broadcasting warnings to every version of myself I could reach. But the strain is killing me, and the dimensional barriers are breaking down. Soon, this place will collapse back into normal space, and I'll finally get to rest. There has to be another way, I said. Some way to get you out of here. There is no out, she replied. This is where broken realities come to die, remember? But that's okay. I've done what I needed to do. I've warned you, and through you, maybe some of the others will listen too. She pressed the data pad into my hands. Take this back with you. Study the timelines, learn from the mistakes, and when Helix Corporation comes calling, remember what you've seen here. I wanted to argue, to find some way to save her, but I could see the truth in her eyes. She was dying, had been dying for years, held together only by determination and the need to pass on her warning. Taking her back to my dimension wouldn't save her. It would only mean watching her die in a different place. Will I remember this? I asked. Or will crossing back erase it somehow? You'll remember, she said. The quantum entanglement works both ways. Every choice I made echoes forward to you. just as every choice you make will echo back to me. We're connected across dimensions, all the versions of Vera Cross who ever lived or ever will live. I stood up, the data pad heavy in my hands. Is there anything else? Any other warnings? She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young woman I used to be, full of dreams and determination. Don't trust the coffee on Kepler Station. It's terrible, and you deserve better. Despite everything, I laughed. I'll remember that. I made my way back to the airlock, but before I cycled through, I turned back one last time. She was watching me from the pilot's chair, her hand raised in a small wave. "Fly safe, Vera," she called out. "And remember, the void only sounds empty if you're not listening hard enough." The airlock sealed behind me with a finality that felt like a door closing on a chapter of my life I'd never actually lived. I crossed back to my own iron mule, secured the data pad in my personal locker, and fired up the engines. As I pulled away from the rogue planetoid, I watched the other ship in my rear cameras. For a moment it seemed to shimmer, as if it were made of starlight and wishes instead of metal and ceramic. Then it faded, becoming transparent, until finally it disappeared entirely, leaving only empty space and the distant glow of alien stars. 3 days later, right on schedule, I received a transmission from Helix Corporation. The job offer was everything she'd said it would be. Generous pay, simple work, a chance to be part of cutting-edge research that could revolutionize space travel. The corporate representative who contacted me was smooth and professional, painting pictures of a future where haulers like me would be obsolete, replaced by ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. "Think of it as an investment in your future, Captain Cross," he said. "One test flight, and you'll be set for life." I listened to his pitch while staring at the data pad she'd given me, at the timeline that showed exactly where that choice would lead. When he finished talking, I gave him my answer. "Thanks, but no thanks," I said. "I'm happy with the routes I've got." He seemed surprised. "Are you sure? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "I'm sure," I replied, and cut the transmission. I kept the data pad, studying it during the long hours between stars. The timelines showed me possibilities I'd never considered, paths I might have taken if circumstances had been different. Some of them were tempting, versions of myself who'd found love, built families, achieved fame and fortune among the stars. But they also showed me the prices those other Veras had paid, the compromises they'd made, the parts of themselves they'd lost along the way. The version of me who'd become a corporate executive had never felt the joy of watching a binary sunrise from the observation deck of a deep space hauler. The one who'd married and settled down had never experienced the profound silence of the void, never learned to hear the universe's secrets whispered in the static. And the one who'd taken the Helix job had never gotten the chance to make any choices at all. Months passed. I continued my runs, hauling cargo through the empty spaces between worlds, listening to the voices in the static. Sometimes I thought I heard her again, the older version of myself, broadcasting warnings to other Veras in other dimensions, but the signals were faint now, growing weaker, as if the barriers between realities were healing themselves. I changed my route slightly, avoiding some of the danger zones marked on the timeline, taking on different contracts that led to better outcomes. Not dramatically better. I was still a long-haul trucker flying a rust bucket hauler through the loneliest corner of human space. But I was alive and free, and the choices I made were my own. One night, while drifting through a nebula that painted my cockpit in shades of blue and gold, I received an unexpected transmission. It was another hauler, a young woman who sounded scared and alone. "This is Captain Sarah Chen, aboard the Wandering Star," she said. "I'm lost in the Veil Nebula, and my navigation systems are failing. If anyone can hear this, please respond." I changed course immediately, following her signal through the nebula's twisting corridors of gas and dust. I found her 3 hours later, her ship dead in space, life support failing. I took her aboard the Iron Mule and got her systems running again, then escorted her to the nearest station. "How did you find me so quickly?" she asked as we docked. I'd been broadcasting for hours with no response. "I was listening," I told her. "Out here, you learn to pay attention to the voices in the static." She thanked me and went on her way, but I kept her frequency in my comm system, checking in on her from time to time. She was young, new to the trade, making the same mistakes I'd made when I was starting out. I found myself offering advice, sharing the hard-won wisdom that comes from years of flying solo through the void. Other haulers started reaching out too, drawn by the stories Sarah spread about the trucker who'd saved her life. Soon, I had a small network of voices scattered across the frontier, checking in with each other, sharing information about safe routes and dangerous territories. We called ourselves the Static Shepherds, and while we flew alone, we were never truly isolated. I realized that this was what the older version of myself had been trying to teach me. The choices we make don't just affect our own timelines. They ripple outward, touching other lives, creating new possibilities. By choosing to help Sarah, I'd created a branch point where her story continued instead of ending in the cold dark between stars. And through her, I'd touched dozens of other lives, creating a web of connection that spanned the galaxy. The void between worlds still tastes like copper pennies and regret, but now it tastes like something else too. Hope and the knowledge that even in the emptiest corners of space, we're never truly alone. The universe is full of voices if you know how to listen, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get the chance to add your own voice to the chorus. My name is Vera Cross, and I drive a rust bucket hauler called the Iron Mule through the loneliest corners of human space. But I'm not alone out here. None of us are. We're all connected across dimensions and timelines by the choices we make and the voices we choose to hear in the static. And that's enough. That's more than enough